Fitz-Gerald is director of the Balsillie School of International Affairs and joins us live from Toronto. Anne, thanks for joining us. So, trying to get aid into this area has been a real challenge, and the aid is definitely there. And only recently, the UN sent in more than 400 trucks, but said that just over 30 of them returned. What is going on with getting this aid in and getting the trucks back?
Yeah, I think that's a mystery question that everybody is curious about. 428 very sizable flatbed trucks that are very observable in any region they might be in, have gone missing. We haven't heard of an independent investigation or an investigation of any sort. We're assuming that the UN is looking into the matter. We've seen scores of photos and videos circulating on social media showing these trucks, well, possibly these trucks packed with fighting forces. But of course, these images have to be subject to veracity and authenticity, like all stories coming out of the region, many of which are polarized at the moment. So it's a sea of misinformation, disinformation, confused information feeds. The difficulty of media access to the region is making things worse.
Right. It's difficult to know what is happening. And when you look on, say, Twitter, and you see all of these very passionate pleas for the world to understand what's going on there, but they can be opposite in their tone. It's so difficult to even know what's happening because of the blackout that you mentioned. So the question is this a deliberate famine by the government? And is it a deliberate attempt to cover it up?
No, I would disagree entirely that this is a deliberate attempt at a famine and an attempt to cover it up. This is not reflective of the culture of Ethiopia or the Ethiopian people, and the people themselves have never demonstrated such readiness to hold their government, their new government, to account. And if this were the case, that this was a deliberate attempt to cover up famine, the people would be holding their government to account. I think it's important to remember that over 1 million people in Tigray were already on food safety net programs. They were already food insecure, as was the case for communities in northern Amhara. We're also seeing variable data on this issue as well. And that notwithstanding, any suggestion of famine is a serious one and requires action to be taken. But I think it's also worth reviewing the sequence of events here over the last 11 months. We saw a conflict. The conflict became contained in a certain region of Tigray involving the federal forces and the Tigrayan, the TPLF fighters. The federal government bowed to international pressure to remove itself from the region. The international community was very ready to move forward, leading on the humanitarian effort without that federal force presence in the region. The federal forces left. The humanitarian crisis spread, the conflict spread. There were border incursions led by the Tigrayan fighters over into Afar and Amara regions. And these were around critical junctures for aid trucks to pass through, et cetera. So all of that activity impeded the humanitarian delivery even more. But I think the issue that hasn't really been discussed yet is the fact that the international community was left working without a formal structure of governance in Tigray, and actually working with a structure that was prioritizing a military insurgency. And humanitarian goals are quite incompatible with the objectives of a military insurgency. And this is where, in my view, a lot of the tension lies. And I think the only thing that's going to address this is for calls for both sides of the conflict, not just to lay down arms, but for punitive measures, threats of punitive measures to be lodged towards the Tigrayan fighters, as well as the Ethiopian government, or else, there's no credible reason or incentive to lay down arms. And we need to see this go both ways, not just one way.
All right, Anne Fitz-Gerald, really appreciate your joining us. Thank you.